Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the Carrot Crunch. I am here with my coach, my bridge coach, and my poker student, Christophe, who's joining us today for some hand review. How's it going, my friend?
All good, thanks. Thanks for having me. Hi,
Cool.
everyone.
Do you want to tell everyone a bit about how we met and what our arrangement is?
Gentlemen, good morning. Welcome.
Wait. Oops, sorry, I was playing the stream on the other screen. You're good now.
Okay. So yeah, sure. So basically, I started playing poker like 3 weeks ago, maybe, and just naturally, YouTube bombarded me with your videos, which I really liked. And watching them, I found out that you played bridge. So I reached out to you saying that I play bridge for a living, and would you be interested in talking about bridge and poker? I bought the Carrot Poker School package and had a lesson with you. And after this lesson, we talked a bit about bridge. And from now on, we try to have weekly coaching when we help each other out. I help you with bridge, and you help me with poker.
Yep.
Roughly that's it, and we just basically started. So let's see if I can make you a very good bridge player. You're already a good bridge player, and if you can make me a decent poker player. What I can say is that right now my level is nothing. I'm losing money on NL10, but trying my best.
Yeah, and as I said to you yesterday, you're in a phase right now where it'd be really good to learn the habit of not giving a damn about the money and just kind of studying a lot for a month and then subjecting yourself to like what my friend Chris calls like a sort of volume challenge where he locks himself away in a room and plays volume for like an entire month and plays like 120k hands. Shocked Chris from the stream, by the way. He's an absolutely great poker player these days, just in case you guys are wondering. We'll need to get him back on. I still talk to him on a weekly basis, but yeah, he's kind of a big believer in, if you haven't gone through the grind mill of just like extreme volume and faced all of the grueling variants, then you've not really developed into a full poker player yet. And what you're experiencing is just the normal human reaction to playing poker online, like for the first time, putting in thousands of hands and just seeing that what it can do. And that's okay, just go through that, live that, study a lot, have phases of study, phases of play. And, in a couple of years, you'll look back on this and you'll laugh that you were bothered by the results of 10,000 hands or whatever. You'll see it as a drop in the ocean. So.
Yeah, but like I was telling you yesterday, it's not that I'm bothered by the result. It's like I'm bothered by not knowing what I'm doing wrong, and it's frustrating. I feel that I'm playing well given what I know.
Yep.
But obviously, I'm not.
That's a really good way to put it. I feel like I'm playing well given what I know. You probably are, but you just don't know enough to be playing as well as you would like. Like, you might well be playing fairly well within your means. You mentioned you've got like some mental game lapses where you get frustrated and you do something you regret. That's really normal. That's like the starting point in poker, and over time you'll stop doing that. So for the audience's point of view, Christoph's a new player. He's not played a lot of poker, and he does have a very good mind for games though, and is an extremely high level bridge player. So what we're going to see here is someone that will pick stuff up quickly but just doesn't have a big toolkit of knowledge yet, and that's sort of my favorite student to work with. So let's get into it. Chat, get involved as well. Let us know what you think. Do ask questions. We'll keep this as interactive as we possibly can. We have Ace-8 here in the small blind. This is a filter I set up, Christoph, for students. It's basically called relevance, and it's just pots that reach a certain size and go to the turn. And that's it. And it's a full sweeping hand review. Cydrus is just asking what site you're playing on.
Poker Stars.
Okay. Ace Queen 5. What's your approach here? Are you betting range small? Are you splitting range?
I think I wouldn't bet range. I would bet if the flop is better for my range, and always a third.
Yeah, so I think that's fine. I think there are many, many ways we can go here. Yesterday, you and I sat down and we started. I sort of gave you the choice. Like I said, you want to be on board with the carrot movement that's going on at the moment, like the carrot system, which is going to be a bit more of a non-standard toolkit of sizes, and kind of the high stakes crusher mentality of, let me do stuff that's going to make people uncomfortable but learn how it works. But instead of doing like a million different things like Linus or Stefan, it's like doing one more controlled game plan that you're familiar with and they're not. And you said, yeah, I'm all in with that, I want to do that. And so we will actually be building for you a different sizing in the small blind for boards like this. This is a spot you can go huge. Out of position in small blind, there are less spots you want to go huge than on button because your EV is a bit lower, but this is still one of them for future. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with what you're doing here. And I think check is also okay in this
Yeah.
spot. Yeah. So we check the turn, which I like. How do you interpret this queen? Like, how do you see that queen after this action sequence?
I think it's a bad card, but not that bad. I mean, villain can have a queen, but doesn't have to have a queen. He's not like marked with a queen, but definitely it can. I can be now losing when I was ahead before. That's how I feel. But I don't think it changes too much, given that. I mean, it does. I don't feel that it changes too much my play, given that on most turns I think I would check call, and I don't think that changes it. But yeah,
Yep.
that's how I feel.
Yeah, it's definitely not enough to make this a check fold. The way to see the flop, like, let's introduce a couple of terms. So a range can move towards or move away from, meaning like become less dense in or more dense in a certain type of hand. When you bet the flop, your range kind of like either stays the same if you're betting range, or it might polarize slightly if you're just betting at high frequency. In any case, it won't move towards a queen. Your range will never move towards a queen. It will never move towards a range that has a queen at a higher concentration than previously. But when villain calls, his range does move towards a queen by virtue of shedding the other stuff, right? Getting rid of some of the other hands. Gets rid of pocket fives, as we talked about yesterday, because that's probably a pure raise here, and gets rid of, junk like the 9-6 of clubs as well, let's say.
Yeah.
So because of that, Mayhem says, I thought your guest was having a stroke, then I realized my playback was 0.25. That's funny. Yeah, I speak so fast that I don't even seem like I'm having a stroke at 0.25, evidently. So yeah, like his range on the turn does move towards that queen, and therefore it's a very low EV turn for you. It's going to be very high check frequency for your range, and your hand is going to be a pure check unless you're playing a block bet here. You could play a block bet here with the reasoning that your ace-x has been demoted. People should raise a lot here against block. So in GTO, you could play a sizing of like block and check here if you wanted. What I'd recommend we do is that you decide what sizing you're going to use in a spot like this, and you just keep asking yourself that question over and over again, even if you're not betting your hand, just so you have some idea of what your game plan is going forward. So what would we want to do here, do you think? Do you think you'd like to like play block bets? Would you like to play just a bigger bet and mainly build it around trips and boats? Obviously, we're going to be checking a lot regardless, but what sizing seems natural here to you if you are betting?
I think big bets, because I feel this is a turn on which sometimes I have a very big hand and I don't want to be betting small. So if I have only one size, I would like it to be big.
I agree, and I don't think you need to bet an ace either, because an ace is a completely invincible hand when it's ahead. It's what we call a way ahead, way behind hand, I think was the expression back in the day. You're either way ahead or way behind, and that's not the same thing as you either got it or you don't. People like to say that. Well, you either got it or you don't. I call. It's like, yeah, but I'm never bluffing. It's right, but I'm never bluffing. So yeah, don't use that. But way ahead, way behind is basically like the hands that are ahead don't need protection, and they're not that thick for value when they're an ace, so you can just check them. And if it's a queen, you just go big or you check. You should, by the way, check a lot of your queen X here, because this is a spot villain should be reopening very, very often. At 10 and L, you could make an exploit and not trust people to bluff enough here. But this is the kind of spot where when you check in GTO, if villain has like Jack 8 that floated the flop or 6-7 or something, they're going to have a very high bet frequency, because the queen is like all in all a very good card for the range. So they will be applying pressure there in theory with a lot of bluffs.
But then if you check a queen, what do? You check call or you check raise?
Depends on the sizing. So if they pull out and bet big, you just check call, because they're value betting a queen anyway, or they're bluffing, and you're going to make them with your blocker. It's very likely that they're bluffing, and it's going to be a low equity bluff on a rainbow board, so there's nothing really to raise against there. So you just check call. If they bet small, which is not a good play in this spot, and they're a weaker player that you think is betting a lot of ace-x, then you're heavily incentivized to check raise. So the more mergy their range is and the more sort of merging mistakes they're making by betting smaller, the more you want to raise, and the more they're playing properly here by betting bigger, the more you just be playing check call or check fold with your range.
Okay.
The accent is
I
a
see people making
mid-American.
fun of my accent. Yeah.
No, no, not your accent. It was my impression of the American guy that's like,
Oh yeah. Okay.
Will,
Okay.
you either got it or you don't. Will. Yeah. That's how I imagine that author of that book, Bob Hamann, speaking, by the way. Whenever I read it, I just picture this like southern drawl. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's a bridge book that Christoph recommended that I read. Is that your bridge friend up there in the chat, Pierre?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, Franschetti. Is he like a very good bridge player like you?
Yes. Yes. He's even better than me. I must confess.
Right, I want him as a coach. Right, Pierre, you're going to coach me from now. I'm getting rid of Christoph. Where I learn poker. All right. What if they're merging with ace 10, ace jack when they overbet? It's not going to. Well, one would never actually have that read. Like, you could just say, well, what if Mars exploded? It's like, well, it just isn't really going to happen, and it's never something we care about. But hypothetically, if Mars exploded, it would destroy lots of shit in the solar system. It would mess everything up. Probably the Earth would cease to exist, from my understanding of astronomy. Anyway, I digress. If we somehow knew that Villain was like someone that big bet ace jack here, it's still probably not enough of their range to just like start check raising a queen really often, because one ace jack suited is going to 3-bet pre-pure. Ace jack off might, even if people aren't playing that polar, and it could raise flop as well. So these hands are just like, one, very unlikely to get to this node, and two, if they do get to this node, we're just not going to know that they're doing that. But hypothetically, there's other stuff we could do. Six of clubs on the river. Villain goes for pot now. Your thought process, please.
Um, I think against this type of guys, I think I have a bluff catcher, and I think they don't bluff often, so I think I should fold. I don't remember what I did, but that's what I'm thinking now.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you definitely have a bluff catcher, and I like that you're already identifying that as the first factor here. That's really, really good. In terms of the type of catcher you have, in theory, we would definitely need to call hands like this, right? At some frequency, because we just simply don't have enough queen. We have to defend about 50% against this sizing. In theory, we don't have to do that in practice, of course. And we don't have enough queen to call turn and then be defending 50% of the time. So our ace X is going to be mixing on river, and our queen X is never going to be folding. And then like our weaker stuff is probably mostly going to be folding. That's the way I would interpret this for this sizing. FL went really small.
Sorry, what did you say would be raising?
Not the only thing we're raising would be like the nuts, right? Like when we've like slow played ace queen or something like that, and like in theory, some bluff that blocks his full houses basically would be the raising range, I would think. But in practice, it's not a good idea to play jam against a 50 big blind residual stack fish like in this spot ever as a bluff. We would just never do that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I agree that there are some. So when we're deciding whether to bluff catch, we should try to work out whether the spot is overbluffed or underbluffed. Be a bit careful about having a sweeping rule like they don't bluff. It's true that at 10NL on PokerStars, like a lot of spots are underbluffed, especially as you face like multiple bets or bets after filtering and stuff like that. And I do agree with you that this is underbluffed. But the reason it's underbluffed is that Villain has filtered on flop, thus, compacting their range, removing a lot of air. That post-filtering bet is very likely to be underbluffed compared to like an unfiltered bet. Like if you checked the flop and then checked the turn as well, and Villain just started bluffing, or started betting on the turn, that would be an unfiltered range that was betting at you, and it'd be way more likely it could be overbluffed now. But when they've like called the flop bet, even though it's a small one, they've still shed the absolute trash, and now to be bluffing, they need to have a more specific type of hand, something like Jack 10, for example. And I'm not sure people will call the flop wide enough at 10NL here either. Like I don't know if they'll call enough like 6-4 of spades and stuff like that on flop to be bluffing by river. So I'm definitely agreed that this is like very underbluffed. Blind versus blind in general, if we talk about like green flags and red flags for a second, green flag is like something that makes you more likely to invest in a spot like this. So it makes it more likely it's overbluffed, and a red flag makes it more likely that it's underbluffed, right? A red flag is pot sizing, filtering has occurred, 10 NL, fish. These are all red flags with this spot, I think. Well, maybe not so much fish, but yeah. A green flag would be it's blind versus blind, so ranges are a bit wider, but that's really the only green flag here. Oh, and texture is a real red flag as well, because it's really easy just to have a random queen. There's a big value range here. So lots of red flags, only one green flag. Definitely a fold.
Uh,
Yep.
and also another one, I feel when he bets turn, it's unlikely that he's on a draw. It's possible, but he might check behind a draw, like King Jack or Jack 10, like you
Yep.
or King
Or at
10.
least not bet at the right
And
frequency, right? Or like not be aggressive often enough.
yeah, and and there is not so many missed draws because on the turn there are not so many draws, and it's at best a gut shot. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly, because you've bet flop and he's called. Remembering that action sequence through to the river is really key, really crucial, right? And understanding the difference between that and then some spot where everyone just checked on the flop. Okay, gonna let Justin, Sensei Justin, into the call. Justin is one of our Carrot Corner senseis on the Discord group, experienced poker player that plays up to 1k NL, so he'll have a lot of insight for you as well, Christoph. So let's get him in here and help with the coaching. Give me a little bit of a
Getting
breather.
grilled by two people now.
That's it. 2 coaches, 1 student. That's the way we like to do it. It's a
Yeah,
intimidating ratio.
sure.
What's up, Justin? You there?
Hey, can you hear me?
We can, yeah.
Hi.
Hello.
So I don't know if you saw the start of the stream, Justin, but Christoph's my bridge coach and poker student. So he said I was a good bridge player, so we have to be really, really nice to him now and tell him he played very well today in all of these hands.
No, I don't want that. Tell me how bad I am. I need to find out. I mean, I find that the hardest thing in poker is to find your leaks. I just don't know how to do that.
Well, hello. I guess I won't interfere too much with the coaching session, but I'll just hang out here.
No, I want you to coach him.
Oh,
I
you
want
do?
you to coach the next hand, basically. I want you to be the coach for the next hand if you're okay with that.
Sure. What are we working with here? Stake-wise, site, just for some background of
10 NL on stars.
sounds good.
So we just decided to fold the river here, which I think is good. We'll move on.
Yeah,
to
I
this
just
one.
tuned in a few minutes ago. I saw a little bit of that hand, but not much.
Yep. Hey Tom Matthews, what's going on, man? How are you? Are you the guy that I think you are? I don't remember if that's the right last name. Are you Tom from like the guy I taught back in the day and stuff? Have you worked with me one-to-one? That's basically what I'm asking you. I'm trying to figure out if you're who I think you are. Pay the human. Never pay the human. All right, open ace queen. Right, Justin, I'm going to let you, even though I'm controlling this, I'm going to let you sort of be the coach here. I want to see your coaching style.
Okay. I guess first we have to ask about pre-flop. If we know anything about villain or why you opted to 4-bet here, what you think your options are.
I think my options are call or raise. Why did I opt to raise? I don't remember. I don't know. I wish I had a good reason, but I don't.
4-betting is definitely fine in theory. I believe I haven't studied 10 rake, but I think this is probably just a raise or a fold. I don't know that you can actually call hijack risk button. Some of these big offsuit hands get bad kind of quickly. But
Okay,
4-bet, okay.
I must confess that I would never think of folding, but yeah, I'm interested to hear more about that.
The idea is this kind of hand just has a lot of trouble realizing equity, making it the showdown. Gets dominated a good bit if you run into ace king, which is a decent portion of the 3-betting range. So
what
kind of
type of
struggles a
hands
bit.
what type of hands would I call with?
You probably have to be quite tight here, and at high rake you play mostly 4-bet or fold, and you can call some bigger pairs, some suited broadways. Maybe ace queen can call. It might be close. I could be wrong. I don't think calling is terrible, but my guess is this hand mainly 4-bets or folds.
And just when we say four bets or fold, how do we decide what factors? Is it just random or is this based on because very often we say it's a mix, it's blah blah blah, but in practice, how do we decide?
Yeah, when I say it's a mix, it's a theoretical mix. I probably wouldn't. I would try to avoid mixing if you can come to a decision of which is better. The factors are mainly just a sense of how wide villain is going to three bet you, how much they're going to continue versus a four bet, how bad they are, what kind of mistakes they're going to make post flop. The more mistakes they make, the wider they are, the more you want to get involved. The tighter they are, the more you want to probably just pitch this. If they're really passive and don't attack you, that could be an argument in favor of call, maybe, because you might be able to navigate, get the showdown, that sort of thing. I think all three are somewhat reasonable,
Yeah.
but I'm a bit squeamish toward call.
Yeah, I'm kind of like, if you made me pick between four bet and call here in this game, I would four bet. And one, that's because you're playing on a site where you don't get raked pre. You only get raked if you go post flop on GG. It less of an argument. But more importantly, we don't just want to think about what the theory says, but we want to think about the game tree and the human domain thereafter. So if you imagine how someone will react to a four bet here at 10 and L, they're going to do quite a few things wrong that make four betting good. They're going to fail to slow play aces in hands that you are dead against and actually would hate it if they slow played. You'd want them to fast play aces here so you can fold. And they will call and play meekly after the flop. So if you have a game plan to be relatively aggressive here in a four bet pot, I'd guess that four betting is better than calling because of the future game tree that you're entering into against a 10 and L reg. If it's a fish though, the fold equity gets so low in the four bet that it's probably just not worth four betting at all.
Yeah, I do think one thing good for us that can happen, we'll probably get a lot of immediate fold equity from flop, as in they'll over continue pocket pairs, that sort of hand, maybe suited connectors.
Yeah.
And then just, yeah, be unwilling to defend.
Okay.
So for flop, were you just doing this with range or what was your strategy here?
So I'm not that experienced with four bet post, so the truth is that I don't really know. What I know is that when this game, I thought I would do third pot or something, and then give up if it doesn't work. But I don't have any better game plan. I feel that I'm often behind. I don't know if they're gonna. And now that I think about it, maybe they're never folding to that flop on this bet with any cards. So maybe I'm just throwing away 11 big blinds here. But I don't really know. Now it feels like yes, it's bad. I can't think of a single hand that they would fold now.
King 10 of spades. King queen of
Yeah,
spades.
I'm not sure they would call. I'm not sure they would call a four bets with that. Maybe they would, but
Ace five, ace four, king 10, king queen.
Yeah. Yep, you've got some even same hand. Ace fives, ace
Six,
queen.
five, ace queen off.
Yep, plenty. So no, there's nothing wrong with this. Okay, how do we coach that response, Justin? So that I also want this to be a workshop in coaching, because like you senseis are getting more experience coaching. We want to make you into better instructors as well. So like, how do you think we coach that response that Christoph just made there?
It seems to me like there is maybe an underappreciation for how wide villain might be continuing pre. So we need to realize that they can still have some weak hands here. Just because it's a four bet pot doesn't mean the villain's going to show up with the nuts all the time. They have a stronger range than a single raise pot, of course, but they still have some things that can fold. And they also have to be conscientious that we four bet them. So if they have a hand like sixes here, sevens, decided to three bet calls a four bet, could very well fold to this. So it's not even that we're only making better hands fold. We're not only making worse hands fold, we're also making some better fold, and we're cleaning up a lot. I would think though, if you don't have a ton of experience in four bet pots, which is pretty common, starting out with the game, just playing a lot of high frequency bets is going to be a good approach. It's going to work quite well.
Yeah. I would also coach that by, like, one thing I noticed there, Christoph, was that you got a bit blinkered on the flop there, like that kind of narrow vision that happens. And I think when you feel lost or confused in poker, it's quite easy for the brain to sort of go into more of a like tunnel vision mode, because your thinking went from more measured to more binary, and you actually said, maybe he folds nothing. I can't think of a hand that folds. Maybe it's terrible. It got very extreme very quickly. It got very binary very quickly. And that's a normal reaction to not knowing what's going on. So I would probably at that point try to coach a bit more of an acceptance of not knowing what's going on. Like, you've reached a very high level in another card game. You're used to knowing what's going on. Now you need to get used to not knowing what's going on a lot of the time. And I think your attitude to that and sort of accepting it and calming down when you don't know what's going on and being okay with that for now will really help you know what's going on in a more paradoxical way.
Yeah, definitely. But what Justin said is really true. Like you mentioned hands that I'm still not convinced they can have. You mentioned pocket sixes. I don't know. There's a 3-bet and call a 4-bet with that.
Maybe
It means
not.
that when I 4-bet, they never fold.
No, they don't. They fold the offsuit kind of Broadway region. That's the most automatic fold. Like king queen off, face jack off if they 4-bet that. And then we're not saying that they always have sixes or never have sixes. We're saying that the pool there's hundreds of people in the pool, thousands. Yeah. Some of them call sixes, some of them don't. So we have to just get into the habit of saying some people have sixes here, some don't. But it's still a part of pool's range because of the people who do have it.
Okay.
Yeah. Admittedly, with the sixth example, I'm not expecting a lot. It's not going to be a super predominant portion of range, but there are going to be some hands like that.
Yeah, and when you're going small like this, like, you don't need fold equity to be high for this bet to be a good thing as well. Because when you make a bet like this, you still have a lot of pot equity that you can hit, much like when you bet a draw. Remember yesterday we chatted about how bottom pair is a draw. You can draw to trips or 2-pair. This hand is a draw. A villain has nines. You have a lot of equity. You have 2 over cards, the backdoor flush draw and the backdoor straight draws against nines. Like, you're in pretty decent shape. The other thing is that you're risking hardly anything relative to the pot. So if villain just folds sometimes, and you have these other redeeming features with your hand, there's nothing wrong with betting. Don't set the bar too high for how good you need betting to be when you're just betting third pot on the flop with a hand that has equity.
Yeah, okay. And I guess the other issue, I mean, I did bet, but the other issue is that there's basically on any turns I won't know what to do, which is not the end of the world. I need to learn that, but like, I don't know, the 4 of hearts comes, should I keep going? The queen of spades comes, should I keep going? I don't know.
You got to feel your way through the hand. You got to fumble your way through, and because you haven't started out by playing 500 NL, which would be a very bad idea. Your opponents, fortunately, are also doing that. They're fumbling their way through the hand as well. They don't know what's going on either. So don't imagine that, like, maybe the other regs have played for longer than you, but they're probably not as good at card games or strategy, and they're probably not getting coached by like 2 carrot corner coaches right now. Well, we know they're not because they're not here. So you've got certain advantages too, right? And you're going to catch up quickly. So don't worry about that. They're not like crushers that are going to kill you because you don't know what's going on. So
yeah, you pick these things up just by playing, getting in these spots, and no matter how long you play, you'll still be lost in at least a few spots.
I concur.
Every session.
I concur. All right, Justin, over to you.
But you just try to work through it. Okay, so I assume it sounded like you didn't really know what to do in the turn. Can we see the action?
I don't know what I did, and I don't know what I should do. I guess everything is, I don't know, I've got no clue.
I guess a good first step is probably to try to evaluate what you think villain's range is going to look like.
Well, I think that now that he called, all the hand that I thought he could have before is now his range, if it makes sense. When I was saying he wouldn't fold any hand, I think he could be slow playing. He could have anything from ace king to pocket jacks. So to me, I don't know, because it wasn't such a drawy flop. So I don't know. I feel he could have anything. So the nuts less often, but he still could, because I'm representing a 4-bet and then I bet. So maybe with trips, he should slow play, because I'm likely to put all my chips in and he's calling anyway, all the way through whatever. So I don't know. Basically, the weakest hands are not there anymore, or maybe some of them. I have some fold equity. If he has like pocket tens and maybe I jam now, he might fold. But I think I'm very, very likely to be behind. I think my equity is really low, and I think that's
Well, certainly equity can't be that low because you have 9 flush outs at minimum. But
Yes.
I agree. Your opponent's mostly going to have strong stuff. What do you think some of the weakest hands they can have are? You mentioned pocket tens.
Yes, pocket 10 is, or maybe, I don't know, 9-8 suited, 8-7, Jack 10, Queen 10. Yeah, Queen 10 of hearts. I mean, now it's not weak, but this type of hands, like Jack 10 of spades, that type of stuff. I don't think, I know I'm wrong, but I don't think he can be weaker than Ace King, basically. I don't think Ace 10 would call. Yeah.
No, I'm trying to think through the spot. I think that's pretty fair.
Just one
I
quick
can see
point.
some ace king. Go ahead.
Whenever the student's thought process sort of contradicts itself, I like to point that out. So like on the flop, we can't have our negativity cake and eat it. We can't say like he's not folding the flop with anything, but now he doesn't have ace 10 suited. Like we'd have to like give way there somewhere. Now I know you've probably just updated your opinion since saying that, Christoph, so that's probably why, but I just want to point that out.
No, I didn't. Where I got it wrong when I said that on the flop is that ace 10 suited, I didn't think they would call the 4-bet.
Okay.
That's why when I talked about the turn, I said now I think that he has what I initially thought he had on the flop bet.
Makes sense. Yep. Okay, Justin, so here where do we go from there then? How do we take that and then try and figure out how to coach the best line here?
So I guess
just a question.
Go ahead.
Sorry, for you guys, is it obvious what's the best line here? Just wondering.
For me, I have a strong feeling that I know what's best here, or what I would do here, and I'd be quite confident in it in game. But it is it's not a spot I've studied a ton, so like I could be wrong, but I'm fairly confident. What about you, Justin?
I'm a little bit lost, but I think I'd probably bet.
Yeah,
I'm
I'd
trying to
bet
work
small.
out if we want to jam or not. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet small and jam
small.
river because I think there's a lot of dead weight hands here that you can bring along to river and then make fold. So whenever villain calls a 4-bet and then calls a flop bet, pocket tens will just be a big part of their range. That's kind of like a rule, because tens is a very likely hand to both 3-bet pre, call a 4-bet, and call the flop. So it might be enough if they have, a bit of 10-9 suited, a bit of tens, a bit of like queens here, a bit of queen jack, a bit of king jack, a bit of ace jack. It might be enough to just like quarter pot the turn and shove the river and just get enough folds on the river there. So that's one thing you can do if you think your opponent's range has medium to good stuff that bricks river. That might mean that an amateur poker player like goes call turn and then overfolds on the river. But that's a bit more advanced. But that's kind of where my head's going to exploitatively here, with this ace of hearts blocker especially. Shove's interesting.
Yeah,
I just feel like
agree.
you might do worse by shove than by block here.
Yeah, I thought about it more. I think you probably just don't want to shove, and you could maybe shove as a value line.
Yeah.
In a pool like this.
Yeah, I agree. But that's more advanced stuff. Like, for your purposes, Christoph, the main thing to understand here is like when you say my hand is behind. That's implicit. Your hand is behind, but that's okay. Your hand's role is semi-bluff here, and it's a very good semi-bluff candidate. So rather than thinking like, oh, I wish I had a better hand, evaluate the hand you have and ask how good a job it does of bluffing. It does a good job of bluffing because it has all this nutted redraw and nutted blockers, right? So betting can't be too wrong. You're not value betting, so you shouldn't be rating your hand on whether you're ahead. Your hand is not in the value hand category. It shouldn't be assessed in that way.
And at the end of the day, we're comparing bet to check, and at least to me, it looks like the check line is not going to perform super great here. It might be all right.
I think it's all right. I don't think check's the big mistake here for what it's worth, but I just think there might be like an exploit in small bet Jam River a bit. But it's not going to be a really high fold equity spot. People's ranges are just like quite strong at this point. I don't think Jam, for what it's worth, can be that bad either, by the way, because they could just fold King Jack here. They could just be like, right, well, I'm not calling King Jack of Spades now, Ace Jack of Spades now. They might fold tets, as you said. This isn't a bad play at all. I think you played the hand well. I think you can maybe improve the turn slightly, but I'm not bothered by this. This is fine. I like that you're semi-bluffing with this hand.
Okay, I survived this one, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you fumbled your way through to an okay line just by basic principles that you were probably lost, but then you were like, maybe I can make him fold and I've got all this equity as a backup. And if that was your thought process, that's enough to do this. If you'd done this with Ace King of Spades, Justin and I would be having a fit right now. We'd be like, this is awful. But you didn't. You did it with this hand. So
Okay. Phew.
Fall back on your basic knowledge when you're unsure, right? Just fall back on what you do have. You don't have the tools to solve that spot yet. Just look at the things you do know and use them to the best of your abilities. That's all anyone can ask you to do.
Yep.
I like this 3-bet a lot against the fish. I think this is a very high V spot for all of the hands you're 3-betting, including ones like this. Even if villain underfolds pre, I'm fine with it because I think they're going to under 4-bet and I think they're going to just play badly as a fish. So I like this. You could talk about sizing, but I'm not that fussed about it.
So, question about sizing. When I'm in position, I tend to always 3-bet pot. I don't know if that's right or not, but it has the merit of being simple.
Yeah, in position, your sizing can be smaller for a couple of reasons. One is that you're generally 3-betting a bit more of a thin value range because you're going a bit more linear and mergy. Because this is just your way of entering the pot with a lot of hands. So if you're 3-betting, like a lot of combos of Ace-10 suited, making the pot huge won't be that great for Ace-10 suited, right? Because it's kind of like it's not a bluff, it's not value, it's somewhere in between. It's just like a good hand that wants to go post-flop and isolate the opener. Or get a fold now. So yeah, small is good here. Default sizing here, I'd go 6, 6.5. I don't mind sizing up against the fish specifically and saying, look, this is a high EV node for me as the in position 3-better against a bad player. Let me juice the node by putting more money into the pot. I don't mind that. But in principle, a bit smaller.
Okay.
Yeah, and though this idea might not apply as well to a fish, but usually even if you go 6 big blinds, villain is going to have a lot of trouble continuing plenty of hands they open. Default a bunch of offsuit stuff to you, a bunch of low stuff.
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
There's a thing called the Clanty 3-bet, which is like min plus a little bit that Luke uses. And he describes it as a line that's served him very well over the years, and he's very like protective of that strategy, and he's put a ton of work into it. The point is that taking out the biggest stick to try to get the most fold equity isn't always the best. It can be economical to garner fold equity and edge throughout the hand by taking your opponent into a node where they don't know how to play. So if you go small here, you're going to force them to call with lots of hands they're very uncomfortable playing in this situation, and you're going to garner a lot of EV post-flop by just like them overfolding and being too passive and being too weak and not knowing how to deal with the spot. So small 3-bet here, go post-flop in a favorable situation. That's an okay default approach. I like putting more money in the pot against a bad player in this node, though, because I think you just build that up, take it down a lot here. They call too wide, they play badly post-flop. When you hit, you have, the ability for them to just randomly spew as well. So it's the best of all worlds. Okay, what are you thinking on the flop here, then?
Did he check?
Yep.
So now what I feel is that I'm very often behind. It's a board when he's not gonna connect that often. So my feeling is that I should bluff here.
I like
I should bluff.
that your assessment of lousy hand is bluff. I really like that. That's a very good instinct, Justin, isn't it? Like a lot of beginners, when they look at a bad hand, their instinct is the check button, but your instinct is the bet button with a bad hand. I actually like that a lot.
Yeah, I can see a lot of people who haven't played much poker just checking this hand. But
I might have checked it.
that is very good if you find it.
Yeah, and the idea
And
is
just
even if you find it after the fact.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's good.
Yep.
How much should I bet? Because I guess I would have bet a third here, but I don't know if
it's
it's right.
Let's not stress like flop sizing too much at the moment. Like you and I are building we're crafting a game plan for you in all of these spots. Eventually we'll have crafted this one. We'll have studied it. We don't need to decide now like what the ultimate strategy will be, but clearly there's nothing wrong with, you know, betting a third here. It can't be a bad thing. Don't want to like stress that too much. I like it, yeah, and it's great. It's good to understand that, like, one, your hand is not air. There's no such thing as air on Jack 5-5. You can't have air, like total air, because you're always going to have some overcards to pocket pairs and over to the Jack. Like, you're always going to have something going on. And the King and the 9 are live outs here against a lot of villains' range. A lot of villains' range is for calling this flop bet is King Queen or Ace Queen or 4s or 7s, and you have 2 overs to that, and backdoor straight draws. So starting with bet here is just great. Like, a lot of good things happen. They're probably going to under raise. They're going to raise maybe too much of their ace jack and stuff against this and tell you, and then they're going to have a hard time in a lot of turns when River's out of position here, with many of the hands are calling this flop with. So just keep your eyes open for the chance of also bluffing a lot of turns on these kind of notes. There'll be a lot of turn spots where you can bet again with this hand.
Yes, that's probably where I'm terrible at. Now, if I don't hit, I'm quite sure I'm going to check behind it.
Yeah, but that's just because you don't have the experience yet, and your default game plan that you feel safe with is check and is bet flop and then give up. But it's not that you're terrible at it. Like, you know, if you went to university and it was like the first day of like a physics degree, and the lecturer said, "Oh, so everyone say a little bit about themselves," and you were like, "Oh, I'm terrible at physics." Like, what? Like, you've just started an undergrad degree. What are you talking about? Like, doesn't make sense. So you're not terrible at poker at all. You're good at poker for your knowledge level. You just don't have any knowledge yet. So like, we need to really separate talent and ability from knowledge. And I'd like you to say, "I don't have the knowledge to do this yet," rather than "I'm terrible at it," because it's not actually the same thing.
Okay. Sure. Thanks for your kind words, but yeah.
It does seem like you have the betting instinct on flop. You can carry over that same idea to later streets on the turn of the river, because you are also allowed to bet air on the turn and in position in spots like this.
Yes, but I guess it's a memory, like selective memory issue, because I don't know if it relates to other weaker players, but the memory of betting 3 streets and losing almost a whole stack on bluff and thinking I'm such an idiot, I need to stop doing that, I'm just throwing money away, it is so sticky in my head that I felt like the improvement from that was stop doing this. And now finding the right balance is probably the next step. But yeah, I don't know if it makes sense what I said. But
it can be tough, and I think as you develop more theory knowledge, it'll help you be more confident about sending the chips in spots like this. Once you're a bit more convinced that it's good and it's something you can do.
Yeah, another little trick here, mental game trick, is make peace prior, not after. So basically, if you had decided that you have to do something, or that it's right to do something, it would be best for your mental game if you just accepted that judgment that you made before you execute, rather than execute with doubt and uncertainty and fear. There's a bit in my book, Poker Therapy, that's called Ouch, I Should Never Have. And it's basically a mental game trap where the input, the trigger, is like, I am unsure of what to do and I'm going to now take a risk, right? Like, imagine that mental state. I'm unsure and I'm about to take a risk. Then you combine that with you bluff and the guy calls you, bad outcome, you lose a stack. So now your mental state is, I was unsure and didn't know and inadequate, and I took a risk, and I was punished for a risk, it went badly. The only conclusion your brain can now form is, ouch, I should never have that hurt, I'll avoid that in future. There's no other way the human mind can really surmise what happened there. That's why when you go back to the input and you change it to, I'm not sure and that's okay, but my best guess using the tools I have is that this is a plus EV bluff, therefore I'm going to do it happily, and I will accept it if I lose. Then when you press the trigger and villain actually calls you, and you lose, you're like, ouch, but maybe it was okay. And that's way healthier than, ouch, I should never have, being the immediate conclusion.
You are 100% correct, but it's much easier said than done.
Yes, that's the roadmap to the solution. That's not like, therefore you're now cured. I'm not like waving a magic wand here by any means. But you have to practice that. You have to then say, what's the route from what Pete described there to where I need to be in poker? And the route is that you need to like try to do that in game a few times and like try and build a habit. That's really the only way it's gonna work.
Yeah.
A great way to be able to do that, by the way, is to just try not to care. The reason I keep saying don't care about the result is caring about the result causes you to like fall into so many different mental game traps and build bad habits at an early point. You're in a very good position at the moment where you've not been playing poker long enough to become an absolute lunatic, and therefore you have the chance to be a sane person in poker, which is easier said than done. But build the good habits, build the sane habits now. Don't become that jaded, bitter, permanently lamenting poker player, because that guy exists. He's very, very common.
We'll try. Thanks.
So on the turn, I think you can bet. I don't think you need particularly high equity to bet this turn. I think 2 live cards against the pocket pair is enough. It's a priori, it's a good thing that you don't have hearts or clubs, because villain is going to call king queen of clubs on the flop with the back door sometimes and then fold turn. So king nine of spades seems like a fine turn barrel here to me. I think I'd do it always at this stake in this game, because I tend to think it's just higher EV than checking. I think the fold equity is pretty good in this spot, and some fish will just click call on the flop like way too wide as well. So I like betting turn here. Justin, what do you think? You have a like preference for sizing here, or agree, disagree?
Versus fish in position at 3-bet pots, they kind of just close eyes and double barrel a bunch. I think they just call a lot of pocket pair on flop that ends up folding to turn bet, and they also call some maybe ace queen high and such.
Yeah, and they're calling too wide pre
typically, typically the cutoff here is supposed to be overfolding flop somewhat substantially, just because they arrive with a much weaker range than we do. If we get a decent board, which a blank jack high board is.
Yep.
So even if we bet third pot, they might well be supposed to fold something like 40 or 50%, which is a substantial overfold. When they fail to do that, they arrive on turn with a lot more weak hands than they should. So it becomes difficult for them not to fold too much.
Yep. So
if this is a reg, I'm not going to feel too strongly about it. But I assume, do we know anything about this particular player, or you just saw the 80 big blind stack and assumed fish?
That's what I did, yeah. Christoph, what did you know? Do you remember any reads?
No clue. Okay. Sorry, guys.
That's right.
My memory is not
that's
good
the
enough.
most common. That's the most common situation, is we don't know about the opponent. So Pierre's making an interesting point here. Didn't we filter some hands on flop? Yes. So again, because you guys are beginners in poker, you're drawn to very binary thinking, like filtered or didn't filter, has good hand, not good hand. Whereas what Justin and I are kind of doing is we're saying there's an extent to which they're meant to filter, and we don't think they filtered that much. We do think they filtered. We're not saying they haven't. We're just saying they've taken too many hands to the flop from pre-flop, and too many hands possibly to the... Maybe not too many hands given what their flop range was, but by defending too wide pre, they're just dragging still quite a lot of weak hands to the turn here. It's not that they haven't filtered at all. We do expect them to fold, you know, I don't know, like a bad hand like 10-9 of spades to our flop c-bet. Like if they could have that, we do expect them to fold that, but they still have lots of bad hands. So if another thing you should be very conscious of here, Pierre, is that if your argument can be applied to literally any situation, then it's probably just a bad argument. So if you say, but they filtered so I don't bluff, that argument, if it were sufficient, would have you bluff never in any spot in poker. Therefore, it cannot be sufficient by reductio ad absurdum. It just can't be. So what are sufficient arguments for not bluffing? Fold equity's too low, villain's range is too strong, spots too unfavorable. They've filtered immensely to a really strong range. There are spots where you overbet the turn against a station. Not that that's a great thing to do, but let's say you overbet a draw against the station, and the station calls you, and then the river comes. Well, now they've filtered too much, and they're just not folding that top pair range enough, so now you should give up. But, like, that's not the case here. So be very careful about arguments in poker that could be used in any spot, because those are necessarily bad arguments.
Maybe one thing to add, I just realized, because you replayed the hand before, and we saw that the river is a 9. And when I saw the river, I feel that I'm winning quite a lot now, which means probably that the same feeling should tell me that if I bluff at the turn, they're going to fold quite a lot, because all the hands that I'm winning against now with the 9 were hands that were going to fold if I bet the turn. I don't know if it makes sense what I'm saying, but is this too complicated?
Yeah.
I'm saying that the 9, I think, is good very often. And if the 9 is good very often, it means that by betting the turn, I will have a lot of fold equity, because their range hasn't changed after that check on the turn. I don't know if it's...
The range has changed here, though.
No, from their check on the turn and when the 9 arrived, I don't think their range has changed. They had no action.
They called your bet on the turn, right? Oh, you didn't bet the turn. Sorry.
I didn't bet the turn.
Yeah. I'm in the hypothetical land where we bet the turn. Right. Yeah. But then they checked the river, right?
Okay.
So that's what's changed their range. Their range has changed dramatically, because on the turn, they still had like a bunch of top pair. They might have had a slow played 5 sometimes. They might have had queen 10 sometimes, or pocket 8s. When they check the river, it's very unlikely that they have those hands. So your equity goes up when they check the river, right?
Of course, yeah.
Yep. And yeah, no, I think your argument makes sense. You're kind of saying if a 9 is good on the river, then the range has to be weak enough that it's folding sufficiently often on the turn for betting the turn to be good. I think the argument makes sense. It's not the normal way that people reason in poker, but I think it's valid and sound. Yeah.
Yeah, I got that too. I was just making sure we were aware of the river check, but when they just land on river, I agree.
So the question is, like, clearly we are not bluffing anymore. The question is, are we value betting? I think, right? This is closer to a value bet now than a bluff, and that's what we should assess. Did you consider value betting here, Christoph, in game?
No, I didn't.
Did you see your hand as just like bang in the middle showdown value?
I wish I could say that. I think in reality I was happy to see a 9 and to likely win the pot, and I checked behind.
Yeah, so you did sort of sense your hand was mediocre then to good, but it wasn't good enough to value bet. Yeah, so implicitly you sense that. Yeah, I'm not saying this is a value bet, but... And I do think villain can still have a jack or 10s or something like that very easily. However, fish are quite bad at not putting more money in by now. They're very bad at slow playing this node usually, and they're also very bad at like having a jack, ace jack or king jack here, I would say. I'm intrigued by the possibility of just like a half pot or third pot value bet, like a greedy value bet on the end here. I don't know what you think, Justin, if that's too thin.
Versus the fish, I'd go probably 30 or 40%, something like that, and just go for it. I think it's worth a shot.
Yeah, I think it's worth a shot as well. I think it's like, if you're against a good player here, Christoph, you have a very easy check, because a good player can be trapping this spot out of position where urgency is lower. We talk about that in Grade 2 Lecture 5, the out of position game. Definitely recommend you watch Grade 2 Lecture 5 multiple times, guys. Very, very important theory cornerstone if you're Golden Carrot or theory scholarship or full scholarship. By the way, we're using the code community this week. We're building our Discord community. We're doing a lot of cool stuff. So you can get 20% everything at Carrot Corner with the code community. Definitely a good time to try to take that next step in your poker education. We make a big deal about that out of position thing because it's a very common leak that people have. They don't find the check raise here. Like if villain has 9s on this river, they should consider check raising all in, because we will value bet tens or a jack or something like that, or an overpair that we didn't bet turn with, although that's rare, and we will also bluff at a decent frequency in theory. So it makes a lot of sense for villain with like nine specifically, when they block that check back hand of ours, to, because a lot of people will check back a nine, to go for that check raise with that hand. But in practice, it doesn't really happen. And also in practice, check raise bluffing doesn't really happen. So what's really going on here is that villain is way more capped and condensed than they should be. And that opens the door to us to be able to value bet thinner. And because they're not bluff raising us enough, we don't face the sword of like having to bet fold the best hand here very often at all. Like, it's very, very unlikely that that happens. So I think I'm with Justin. I would get greedy here. I would go for a B40 or something and just bet what we think the hand is worth. And you'll be surprised how often the fish just snap calls with like pocket sixes or ace king that they didn't 4-bet pre, or some hand like that.
Yeah, I think you guys are right, and I think that's so much money can be made by making these bets, because I think you're right. Like, so often in similar spots, I have bluffed 40% and they call with nothing, and I'm frustrated. So I shouldn't be always on the losing end. So yeah, I think that's a big area of improvements, to judge it right, basically. Because I know that if I try to bet this spot, sometimes I will bet when I shouldn't, but I need to practice that more.
Yeah, and bluffing the spot's not bad either. And if you bet 40% of the pot, I'm not saying that's the best bluff size, but like if you do choose that bluff size, like the fold equity you require is about 30% or something. Like, you should try not to be too frustrated when they call you. They're meant to call you like most of the time when that's your sizing.
Yeah. No, but I agree. Bet is good, and I'm sure I didn't do it. Yeah.
And this is why we 3-bet this hand against fish. He's played this hand terribly. Like, he has a very clear river bluff here as played. And the flop call is like, it's probably not like terrible, but it's dicey. And he's probably never raising this hand with the flop. It's a very clear like flop raise at a high frequency if you're ever playing any raises. And he's not 4-betting it ever pre, and it's also not a call pre to that sizing. So villain's made a lot of mistakes here, and we can predict that's going to happen, and that's why we get involved in this spot in the first place. That's why we don't follow a range chart, guys. Try and play exploitatively pre-flop in the first branch of the tree.
Surely villain calling the flop with his hand is donating multiple big blinds, right? It's really bad, isn't
I don't
it?
think it's donating multiple big blinds, because like he's got ace X, he's got backdoors, it's 4-1. It probably is a fold. I wouldn't think it's like a huge punt. I could be wrong though.
No, it's close. I was curious about the river, so I pulled
Oh,
up
did you look up? Yeah.
This hand is actually just strong enough to be 60 on the river. Or
Yeah.
33. It's close in theory anyway.
Yeah, okay, that's a clear bet then. I guess in theory, on this run out, the cutoff is going to just be like playing a lot of small bets with tens and a jack and stuff like that, so their checking range is even more capped then.
Yeah, and I think it kind of is a consequence of us being meant to bet a good jack or better almost pure on turn.
Yeah.
If they land with a jack, they're just supposed to bet a bunch
Get
themselves.
greedy, it's just a huge hand. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. All right, that was a good one.
Interesting.
So chat, what do you think about these streams? Is there anything you would like to see? Do you like the student formats? Do you like the carrot lab that we did yesterday? Do you like the strategy crafting? Let us know what kind of content you want to see next week on Carrot Corner. We want to keep bringing it to you guys. Okay, we're blind versus blind. Defend big blind here. Any thoughts on flop?
Me?
Always student first. Yep, you give your thought process before we give you feedback.
Here I think that I have a good but not great hand. He's gonna bet very often. I'm often ahead. I don't want the pot to become huge, so I just feel it's a call. I'm gonna call a second street for sure, and I'm gonna see what's gonna happen on the river, and depending on what comes out.
Yeah,
I don't see any points in raising. I would never fold. I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to be right now. Do you think villain is? How do you think villain's half pot flop strategy is going to differ from like what solver would do if you gave it a half pot sizing?
I'm thinking now. I didn't think about that before.
So it's not an easy question. This is a bit of a tough question, but I thought it's worth asking.
I mean, I doubt. I don't know. I don't even know if villain will have different sizing.
Presumably not. Most people don't.
So I wouldn't take any. Yeah, I don't know from them. And if it was a solver, I think it's there should be lots of checks here in because they're out of position. But when they bet, I don't know. I feel it should be either very weak hand or I don't know a 9. He could have a 9, a queen, or anything better.
So I'm talking more generally. The solver, if you dial up its sizing, we talked about betting volume in our lesson yesterday, then its frequency will go down, right? Like that's how betting volume works. So if you play a half pot C bet out of position here, there's no way you can do that with range, and you probably have to be like moving away from the bad 9 and moving away from pocket 6s when we talked about like moving towards, moving away, moving towards a queen, moving towards a bluff, that kind of moving towards 4 or 5 and jack 10, that kind of thing. In reality, fish are just going to be all over the place. They're going to have far too much like random ace 10 in here that a solver would have proportionate to the rest of the range. So the answer to that question is solver's going to be a bit more polar than pool is. Pool's going to probably be out of control, too wide, putting too much betting volume basically when this is their sizing choice, would be my read in this spot.
Yes, I agree. But I didn't think that like I don't know 10-9.
You're not meant to think that.
10-9 would be.
That would be an impractical thing for you to think about in game. It's just worth pointing out as a general pattern.
In any case, it's not particularly relevant to your flop decision here, but it could be useful given if you had a different hand.
Yeah. So
or for later in the hand is mostly when it might.
Exactly. So if you had 4 or 5 here of diamonds, you have the option to call or raise in GTO. Like you can probably do either. Against half pot, might be getting closer to fold as well, but I don't know. But like because of that read, I would be tempted just to raise to like 8 big blinds or something, and just risk 8 to win 9, and you've got some backdoors, you've got some pair outs against some of villain's range, and they're probably betting far too wide and weak for the sizing. So like small raising here with like some low equity bluff is probably really good because of that. That observation we've just made about how fish construct compared to how they should. Okay, let me just look at chat. This is good. More of the same kind of content would be good. Yeah, no worries. There's never been a recorded incident of a gorilla killing a human. Yeah, we could try and set that up. That might be difficult though, like budget-wise. Nah, I think we'll not bother. Next week, we want Sambulance hand histories. Yeah, we can do that. Sam, you coming on next week? You there? You there, bro? Do I need to WhatsApp him? Should I WhatsApp him, guys? Pete, 2 quick questions. Will you bring back Stars Playing Explains, and will you bring back Fly on the Wall? I probably won't bring back Fly on the Wall because there just aren't good games to observe really anymore. 500 Zoom doesn't really run, for example. Will I bring back Stars Playing Explains? I could do. I actually took the money out of Stars that I had in there because I'm not playing on there at all. I just decided to move any of my volume that I was playing over to GG. Because Stars died, I could put some back if people really wanted that, but yeah, no plans for either of those 2 things right now. So, get the 10 of clubs turn, villain bets again. What's your thought process here?
My thinking process is that it's a bad turn for my hand. I don't know about my range, but for my hand, definitely a bad turn. That being said, I still think that my hand is too strong to fold. I also feel that if he's I mean, it's a good hand for him to keep. No, actually, it's probably a bad turn for him to keep bluffing, because now if he has, I don't know, like 6-7 suited or 8-7 or 8-4, whatever, my hand is very likely to improve with the 10.
Yeah, that's
but
a good point.
But still, I feel I can't fold now, and I mean, a jack would make me win clearly. I might still be ahead. I'm just gonna call and see what's happened on the river. The only issue I have is that I feel that I'm likely to have to fold river against this opponent if they beat again. Because sorry, I'm talking bridge. if they bet again.
And pass the river.
Oh, Justin,
Yeah,
you're a bridge
exactly.
player as well. I totally forgot that for a second. Yeah, 3 bridge players on
Yeah,
the
I have
scum.
some bridge experience.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's a bit weak in the way that I know I'm gonna fold the river. Maybe it's wrong, but I know that's what I'm gonna do. But I can't fold now. That's how I feel.
Yeah. So the thing is that hot odds are king in poker. They really, really matter. Do you know, without looking at the replayer cheat code here, do you know like how much of this pot needs to belong to you, so to speak, for you to call profitably here?
Yes, they bet half pot, so the whole pot would be 4 basically, and I'm gonna put 1.
Yeah.
So it's 25%.
Good. So you've got that down. You can understand that. A lot of poker players. This is almost Pete Rant's territory here. I don't know if I should go on a rant or not. I think the chat should decide whether this is like a famous rant moment or whether we just stick to the hand review. I'll let them decide right now in the chat. Tell me. But
It is really bad though.
yeah, very briefly. There are lots of students. Justin will know this as a poker coach. Every poker coach knows this to their frustration. There are lots of poker students that when you ask them how long they've been playing, they'll say 3 years or 11 years or 16 years. And then you'll say, how often do you need to win to call a half pot bet? And they'll go, oh, it's 50%. And you're like, how long have you been playing poker? And they're like 9 years. And you're just like, I just can't do it. I can't deal with it. It's too painful.
The worst part is that 50 can never be the answer, no matter what size they face.
Unless the pot's empty, like entirely empty, like a burglar came and took the pot away. Now it's 50. But yeah, it's wild.
Maybe with GG Rick.
But just something about that is that you're right now, but the issue is that it's not finished. And very often I feel, okay, now I need 20%, and then the bet again on the river. I need 20%
That's a different
again.
spot.
But
you still need 25% here, and that would only be a good argument if their river bet frequency was really, really high, and it's not. Their river bet frequency is not high, at least their frequency for betting big, when they've bet this sizing on the turn. They will sometimes bet the river, maybe it's half the time, I don't know, and you will fold when that happens, and that's probably that could be the right thing to do in this spot. But that doesn't mean that you don't have 25% on the turn, because very often they will check the river. Like, when I say very often, I don't mean most of the time. I mean a significant slab of the time. And then you have the chance of hitting a jack or a king or a 9 as well, and you have implied odds there. So your pot share is so much more than just the branch of the tree where you face the river bet and fold. You're tunneling into that because you're threatened by it, and you're tunneling into things that you're threatened by, because that's what humans do. It's not that big a part of the game tree, even if it feels like it is.
No. I disagree, because otherwise I would have folded. So I completely agree with what you said. The only thing I'm saying is that I know when making that call that I'm going to fold river, and I'm fine with that.
Okay, good.
I don't know if I'm right, but that's okay. Where I...
Sorry, I thought you were saying that like you don't like it makes you really unhappy about calling turn or something like that.
No, what I'm saying is that I don't like this idea of saying the 25%. I wouldn't, not that I don't like it, but I wouldn't think like that in that spot. I wouldn't think I need 25% of the pot, because I know the pot is not always going to stop here.
Okay.
So the 25% is a bit biased, because I know they might bet third pot in the river just as a thin value bet, and I'm going to call like an idiot because the pot odds are so good. And in the end, I lost six big blind now, and whatever 10 or 12 in the river, which is actually more than the whole pot
Yeah.
now.
So I don't mean the pot literally. I'm using the pot as a way to just like make sense of the situation. So when I say our pot share EV needs to be 25%, I'm kind of saying across every single branch, present and future, that can happen, our EV needs to be worth 25% of what this pot happens to be right now. I'm not actually literally talking about dividing up the pot based on your equity or anything like that. So it's more of like a framework for just like, it's a benchmark. It's like something to compare something to. And yeah, you're 100% right. It's not a spot where you can literally do a required equity calculation, but you can just say like, do I think I get 20%, not of the pot, but do I think I'm more than 20% in this spot just as like a human versus human? Like, is this favorable enough for me overall, across the whole game tree, for my EV to be 25% of the total EV or something like that? That's kind of how I'm thinking about it, not like really mathematically like saying I need this much equity. You're right, that doesn't work unless you're on the river.
Okay, yeah, but then I agree.
It's a very useful trick as well. Pot share EV is a metaphorical term in the carrot poker school, not a literal term. It's just using the pot as the benchmark. It's a very good way of thinking about the game.
Yeah.
Villain checks.
But it ends up being something you rarely calculate. It's kind of just nice to look at every now and then as a reminder of roughly what odds you're encountering.
Yep.
Exactly. Okay, villain checks the river. Where are we? Like, what's our hands equity now? What are we going to do?
So I think this is very similar to the hand before. I should probably bet, and I probably didn't. And I think we are winning often. And I think that it's a spot that is very bluffed, and villain might feel that I'm bluffing very often, and he's gonna call a small bet, like I should bet, I don't know, half pot, maybe 60%. That's what I feel now, but I fear that I checked. But I don't know.
Okay, Justin, what part of that would you respond to as the coach, do you think? Like, what jumps out at you there?
There was something in there about being perceived as bluffing a lot in this spot. That can matter in a sense, but I think we want to just pull that thought process into how often villain's going to call us, what they're going to call us with. That's the more direct question we want to answer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when your main experience of how people think about the game is a projection of how you think about the game, because you don't have a lot of like other reference points yet. Like for me, I've coached, literally hundreds of students, maybe thousands at this point, like 1-to-1 for, the last 15 years. I've been doing that. And I've heard every thought process every student has, and like I've got a really good sense of like where people perceive you to be bluffing and where they don't. And I don't think they perceive you to be bluffing much in this spot, but it's taken many, many years for me to get that experience. So for you, it's much better to go to the more central objective questions like, how good is my hand? What sizing can my hand bet for value? And are there enough hands worse than me that are calling me? We don't need to mess too much with like how they'll perceive it or like anything like that at this point. We'll get to that at some point, but that'll be built up slowly.
You're right. I guess this is more what led me to conclude that they're going to call a lot.
Okay. Yep. Yep. I think like the biggest indicator of whether you should value bet is your landing equity. Because if that's really high, it doesn't actually matter whether they're calling really often or just kind of often or like even like a bit rarely, as long as they're not never calling worse. If you've got a lot of starting equity, you can value bet. So if you think that King 9 is like a good hand here that might be worth 75 or 80% like equity in the spot, just make some sort of bet and then don't stress it too much. Like people will call enough. If you go half pot here and you have 80% starting equity, that's never going to be a problem. You don't have to get into the meta of like he thinks I've got this or whatever. It's just going to be fine.
Yeah. I don't know what I did, but yeah.
Yeah. So I think
you can usually trust villain to find something to call with in a spot like this.
As long as you go small
you
enough.
Have a hand that's yeah.
like if you pot it here, this is just a really bad play with this hand, right? Because like it doesn't have the equity for that. Its equity can't stomach that. But if you go half pot here, it can't be bad because like you're not losing so often here that villain can call you with a range that's ahead of you. Like when villain's calling range will still be behind you probably for like a small size here. Yeah, this is good. This is really good.
Oh, nice.
Really, really good. Really great hand. I think a lot of potential. I do. I mean, that's kind of obvious because like the level you've got to in bridge, you're not going to get that level in bridge if you had no poker potential. But I do think like that value bet there is indicative that you understand what's going on. Like you're understanding that your hand's worth something. You're understanding it's not worth that much, and then you're like betting. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I didn't know I did, but yeah, I'm proud of myself.
It's really good. A lot. Most people don't bet here. Most people just check back here. And also, I want your reference point to be other regs that play 10 and L. So when you're thinking about your skill level, think about that, right? Probably 1 in 10 10 and L regs bets that river. Maybe 2 in 10 push. What a player, says Pierre.
He's teasing me.
So do you two play together in like tournaments a lot?
Bridge, yes.
Yeah.
We face each other all the time.
Oh, you play against each other a lot?
Yes.
It's interesting.
So, yeah.
I was just going to say, just on the bridge front, like, I think you get, like, different types of bridge player. Like, you get different types of poker player. So, like, I can tell by talking to you that you're, like, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you're really big on judgment and making close calls and hand evaluation and, like, just judging things. I feel like that's, like, one of your, like, major things as a bridge player. And then you get players that are, like, deeply, deeply analytical as well, and you get ones that are more like intuitive and instinct based. Am I wrong with that, or like is that fair to say of bridge players?
The first two types, I think you got it right. The third one, I'm not sure, but yes, you have the ones that are very trying to judge, and some people that are like the mad scientists and they want to analyze everything and take ages and yes. But Pierre and I are more of the first type for sure.
Yeah.
We're too lazy to analyze.
Yeah, I'm the same. Like, I get to the table, I'm like, I know the odds of this have now changed based on what I've seen, and I think it's in this direction, so I'm going to do this. But I'm not going to sit here and try and work out, like, the chance of a line succeeding or something like that. Like, literally. I just couldn't imagine that. Maybe that comes. Anyway, I'm going to derail. I love bridge too much, and I'll derail everything in a minute if I'm not careful. So let's get back to poker.
Yeah, I'll say one thing before we get back to poker.
Yeah.
Is I think one cool similarity is hand reading throughout a poker hand is kind of like trying to trace the auction to see, you know, which cards are likely to be on which side, which breaks are more likely in certain probabilities. And I think that, at least in my experience, is really hard to do in any sort of computational manner. You kind of just have to play and use some ideas and make a good estimate.
Yep.
Yes, for sure. But you need to. Yes, assessing is the right thing. Like assessing what the range based on each bet, and it's what I need to learn or get a better feeling about. And because you've got GTO and you've got what actually happens in real life, and definitely it's something I'm much better at bridge than at poker. But yeah, that's what we need to learn.
Yeah, I guess in bridge that whole process is more structured, right?
It is, but yeah. I'm sure if you've played enough and studied enough, you get really good at it at poker. I can see how it's gonna improve.
All right, so open, call, king 7 deuce, check, half pot, check, call. So Pierre is asking, could we 3-bet pre here? I would not recommend it. The reason being that this is the fish opening under the gun. Now this hand in equilibrium, if you 3-bet it pre, it's very dicey already, probably a bit too weak in these positions. It's a very tight early configuration. It's a very strong dominating range. But when a fish opens under the gun, they're going to underfold to a squeeze, most likely. And then why are you squeezing king queen? Like, what are you doing? You're clearly bluffing with this hand, or semi-bluffing, and you're doing it with a fold equity deficit, so it's not advised in this spot. Very different to the spot before where we're 3-betting in position against just one opener. and we have a huge amount of equity with king queen off, like button cutoff here. But against under the gun out of position, it's just a totally like hostile climate compared to the last one. So definitely just a call. You played this well pre. Unless
prime example is
go ahead.
Both under the gun and button are probably supposed to fold ace queen off to your squeeze almost always, or 4-bet it, not call. And clearly that's probably not going to happen, and clearly that's really bad for our hand when it doesn't happen.
And we're not saying they are calling ace queen off. We're saying they're calling it more often than zero. And this is a really useful thought process in poker where, like, I'll look at a sim with a student and the sim will be always calling the turn overbet with top pair. And I'll say, turn's overfolded. They're overfolding top pair in the turn. And the student will be like, they're folding top pair in the turn? And I'll be like, no, bozo, they're overfolding top pair in the turn. I don't actually call them bozos because they're giving me money and, you know, it's quite a steep hourly. But, and all it means is, like, if the solver is calling top pair at 100% frequency to my 2x pot, there'll be some guy that's folding it, right? And maybe if it's even 15% of people, sorry, 15 out of 100, Sam, yeah? If 1.5 out of 10 people are folding that hand, that's more than 0 out of 10. A lot more. It's infinitely more. So, you know, it's overfolded. That's a good way to think about it. We don't know if he's folding ace queen pre or not, but he's folding it. The pool is folding it less than the solver is, because the solver's always folding it. Okay.
Yeah, and if these are both fish, I would really wager that there's not much folding happening with that.
No, it's a very good spot to have aces. And if that's the case, then, you know, king queen off can just not toy with the idea of squeezing. Check call and flop. Yeah, I don't think I'd do anything different against this range in half pot. You could raise, but it doesn't feel best. I'd rather try and get some transparency here and figure out what's going on. Okay, so this is a really important node, but you're going to come across a lot. Like, this is obviously a kind of joke of a sizing. It's not a thing. In theory, what do you think of this, Christoph? How do you interpret this, and what do you want to do about it?
Because they're in position, I feel that it's really weird, because if they have a draw, why don't they check? It feels like it could be many things, but probably the most likely is a weak value bet that I'm probably beating. From my experience, it's what is the most often. Or the nuts. Sometimes they have the nuts and they don't want me to fold and they want to get some value, like pocket pair, like trips, pocket twos or pocket sevens, pocket nines. So in any case, I feel that I should just call and probably check the river, or maybe bet small, like blocking bet the river. But yeah, that's what I think.
Okay. I think you're being a bit pessimistic. So if Felon's range is mostly weaker value bets, like queens, and the thing is with fish, it's not that they're value bets, it's just weaker hands. So I think implicitly there you're applying like a polarization understanding to the opponent, almost as if they're like a proficient poker player. The fish you play in poker are like I mean, this in the most respectful way, but the two old ladies in the bridge club, like you and Pierre could go to a bridge club in France. You're traveling about, you're on a little bridge holiday. You pop into like a bridge club in a town somewhere and you play against whatever the French equivalent are of like Betty and Gladys, whatever those names are in French. And they don't know anything about the game, really. And you wouldn't assume that they understand how to eliminate other suits and then exit such that you have to play that your end played. Like, they're going to understand that. You wouldn't give them that reasoning when you looked at them, right? So here, you shouldn't give your opponent the reasoning of being able to polarize at all. And you should put jacks and tens and all kinds of draws and worse kings and all of these hands, 9x and 7x in this range, and you should raise and get greedy, because as long as your equity is high here, raising is best because you're out of position. And if you call and check the river or even donk small in the river, you're just capping what you can win. When I see this turn sizing, my first instinct is just greed. I just want to get greedy and attack it for value.
Yes, and a bit like the situation before, it's definitely where it's getting more out of hands when I'm ahead. It's definitely where I need to improve the most.
Yeah.
I heard everything you said, and I still can't convince myself. It's hard. I have the memory of okay. Let's say I raise. He calls. What do? I bet again on the river.
Yeah, because your hand's still worth something. And you might lose. You might get called down by aces. And that sucks, but that's part of the game tree. And being greedy for value, we have to get value owned sometimes as well. That's part of the deal.
Yeah. I know you're right. I understand it. It's just.
Yeah, it's just you don't have that pattern yet. Like, your pattern is, I faced a double barrel on the turn from an under the gun player. And when that's the case, like, we don't raise top pair, right? But when it's this sizing, it plays more like a reopening check than a bet. Like, imagine villain went, I check, but now you get another turn again on the you get another turn to act on the turn, like on this street. That's almost like what this represents, this bet. It's almost like he's got his checking range, but he's given you another chance to act. It's closer to that than him having the polarized big bet range.
So all of this applies because he was not full stack, and the sizing is weird, and we're just saying this is a fish.
It looks
right?
like a fish, and it smells like a fish, and it lives in the ocean. It's probably a fish.
Yeah, okay, sure. So we agree that if it was, I don't know, if he bet 6 big blinds, I just call, because if I'm raising, I'm only called by better hands.
Well, now you're picking the sort of sizing that I'm getting close with. If he picks 11 big blinds, you definitely just call. If he picks 6 big blinds, I don't know, man. It's getting into that, like, it's probably mergy. Okay. It's going to be less aces now. It's going to still be, like, a lot of hands. I might still raise against 6 big blinds. I think when you get up to, like, 8 or 9, maybe then I'm just calling.
Okay.
Jimmy.
No, I'm reading the... Yeah.
What are you doing? This is a coaching stream. The whole premise of a coaching show is that there'll be students on the show of varying levels, right? Some of them are going to be better than you at poker. Some of them are going to be worse than you at poker, probably, depending on your level. Christoph's a very new player. He's going to be wrong a lot, and he's also very... I think Christoph's very accepting that he's wrong to not raise the turn here, so I don't think you need to be, like, quite so upset by it.
No, but it's fine. I don't mind it. But so I agree, and I agree with the equity. What he's saying. What I don't know, and I guess what I misjudged, is how often they will call a raise with worse hands.
Quite often. If you, I mean, you don't want to go huge. You're just trolling. No, it's fine. It's just like, it's a little off-putting maybe for Christoph. That's all. I know he doesn't mind.
No,
it's fine. So when we raise here, like, we don't raise big. We just want to raise to like 10 or something, and then bet the river. Like, that's fine. That's a big improvement. I mean, you could go really greedy here and go bigger, but I'm not like certain that you have the best hand. I'm not like saying we have 95% equity. I think we have like 80 something. And some of that's because we're beating draws that are live. But yeah, going for like a raise to 11 big blinds or 10 big blinds here, then just betting the river half pot is a massive improvement on just calling the turn. So yeah, I don't know how much equity we can get here. Sorry, how much value we can get. We can get quite a bit. I wouldn't be trying to put my stack in, but we should try and get some. And we should also understand the urgency that when you're out of position and you take a line like call and then check the river, that mergy, condensed, capped range that you're beating is going to check back very often, and that's going to be all she wrote. That's going to be all that you win, right?
Yeah. And so if I raise here, the river would be a bet fold then, correct?
Yes. If I took a line like raise the turn to 12 and bet the river 28 and villain jammed the rest, I would definitely fold. I think that's like a super underbluff situation. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm going for all of it. Maybe all of it's okay against certain fish. The thing is that as you start to put the stack in, if he's a station, it's great, it's fine. But you are losing here sometimes, and you don't want to enter a situation where you're a dog when called, because that's just like awful. And you don't want to be in a situation where you have 52% equity when called either. You want to be in a situation where you've got like a big pot, but also a good part of that pot, like a good share of that pot when called. So yeah, I think some kind of smallish turn raise and then like moderate river bet is a good way to go here. And now let's guess his hand. He's probably got like 8s or something completely stupid, and you'll look at that and be like, why would he do that with 8s? And it's like, because he doesn't understand the game at all, because a lot of fish don't. There you go. You reopened with the middle hand for absolutely no purpose whatsoever and allowed you to A, find out what his hand was likely to be, B, get tons more value than you're ever entitled to get in this spot. This is how you can beat poker games, because people play like at these stakes. This is why like 10 NL is beatable despite the high rake. People are hemorrhaging money, and we need to figure out how to take it from them.
Yeah.
We're squeezing
Yeah.
free next time.
Yeah, 10-9 off guy. Well, this is the thing, right? If the guy, I was going to add that, if the guy is like a 50 VPIP, you just upgrade King Queen. You just begin to see it as like a nutty hand, right? It's all relative to his range. So, yeah, it's an option if we know. And they will call turn raises. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. As Jimmy says, they will.
Yeah, the reason squeezing is appealing in general is because the button's probably just gonna have to fold almost always, so we just need to get it through the opener. Depending on what we know about opener, it could be reasonable.
The thing is, though,
And what sizing? Sorry.
I was just going to say button won't always fold because button might be a fish with fives. It's like, show me a 5 dealer as well, you know? So that's going to happen.
Yeah, but I think that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. What sizing you're asking?
Yeah, for the squeeze.
So if you're squeezing
2.2.
here, I would be going... You're not squeezing this hand by default, just to clarify for chat, but you'd be going like... I go like 14, 15 in this spot if I'm squeezing. I'm going to make it pretty big. Because I want to maximally... I want to get button out of there, because he has position. I don't really want to go three-way, and if he does want to call some hand against my strong range that I'm squeezing, I want to make it really bad, and I want to punish the fish for like opening too wide under the gun and calling squeezes too wide. So I'm gonna shovel a lot of money in here with top of range, a lot. It make him suffer. You know, it's always a good thing to do in poker, make them suffer. What kind of bridge player are you at the table, Christoph? Are you like an intimidating guy that like scares people, or are you like a nice guy?
No, I think I'm a nice guy, but
Okay.
you should ask others because it's really hard to judge oneself about that.
Well, that's Pierre.
You think you're a nice guy, but Pierre is a nice guy.
Yeah, always see small turn bets from weaker players as we can merge. Yeah, it's a good rule. Yep. See, Jimmy, now you're coaching in a more constructive way. We're making you into poker coach here.
Okay, this pre-flop, is this clear what I should do?
No. Because calling and four betting are both options in theory. And you need to decide what's best in practice. My instinct is that I like four betting. And I like four betting small-ish. Just because like humans don't play very well in 4-bet pots, and I think they will jam too much aces and not slow play that again. That's just how they play at these stakes, and I think I'll just have an easier time there. Especially if, like, for example, like you have a few options when you first start playing. You can study out of position 3-bet pot, or you can mostly avoid it and play a lot of 4-bet fold. That's okay too. And if you're playing a lot of 4-bet fold here, you're exploitable in the sense that like you have too much tens in your range when you 4-bet, but no one's going to exploit you for that. In fact, quite the opposite. They're probably just going to call the 4-bet and play meekly or fold. So in a game like Stars, it's not raked pre-flop. I quite like just 4-betting to 17 with this hand and just saying, if he calls, I'll survive and I'll have an edge in like that line because it's hard for them to play that line. And if he folds, I clean up a ton of equity. And you don't need to see 4-betting as like a hyperpolar thing. 4-betting out of position at least doesn't need to be either like the nuts or a bluff. It can be tens or jacks or ace queen or a hand like that as or ace king off or lots of these hands as well. Oh, you are a poker coach, I see. Do you speak to your students like you did earlier with Christoph? I'm just trolling, you know. Does that make sense though? Guys, like, does that make sense to you, Justin? Like that argument about like why I might 4-bet here if I'm just playing 10 NL and Stars?
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for trying to, I guess, lower the burden of things you need to learn when you're starting out, because there are a lot of spots you are going to encounter if you play like a solver.
Yep.
And out of position, high rake, there's not much calling anyway. I could see just playing nearly 4-bet fold.
Mm-hmm.
And you're also right in the sense that it's probably a better spot than the theory would suggest.
So sometimes you have a spot where like theory says the lines are equivalent, and then that's what piques my interest. I'm like, that's curious. You think it's exactly the same EV for me to call as is to 4-bet? Well, that'd be odd in real life, right? If the EVs were exactly the same. Therefore, one's probably better, and if I just think a bit about my pool and how they behave, I can probably figure out what the best default game plan is here. And like, yes, one day when you play higher, you're going to need to learn how to flat tens here and survive in a 3-bet pot, but that is a really difficult thing to do, and it's much easier to 4-bet and then play that line than it is to call and then play that line, and it's exploitatively justified based on the pool you're in. So for now, I would recommend a lot of 4-bet or fold. And I say that to all of my micro stakes and low stakes students. I'm just like, 4-bet that hand. And they're like, but it's a mix. The solver says 30%. I'm like, we'll do it 100% and see if like the roof of your house falls in or something. Like it won't.
Okay, I like that.
This hand is probably not worth very much either. It might not be far off from a fold, but I wouldn't fold.
Correct. Like 4-bet, fold, and call are all very close in EV. Even though they're like wildly different looking actions, they're all very close in EV here with a hand like 9s or 10s. It's important to understand that. Like, we're not trying to do amazing things EV-wise by 4-betting. We're just trying to take an okay line. So we call and then call the flop. And this is kind of like, I want to explain here, this is why money flows to the, like, clockwise to the aggressor in poker, and even more so in reality. Because how miserable does this feel, Christoph? Like, how awful does this feel with tens here? It feels like you're losing the whole pot, right? Like, your EV is basically 0, and that's right. Your EV is 0. And it sucks, and it's demoralizing. And it's more fun to play nodes where you get to win more often as well. And that's another little argument for the 4-bet. But this is the most demoralizing spot in the game tree, is having tens, like, in a 3-bet pot. Can we fold flop here? Like, is it that far away from a fold on flop? It's probably not, right?
It's a mix.
It's a mix. Okay.
Yeah.
So you could just fold the flop. You could be like, this spot sucks. I don't want to deal with it. I'm just going to fold now. You can do that.
Yeah, probably I should, because it's getting worse. I mean, I know it's not gonna get better. Like, I'm hoping for check, 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 check. This is ridiculous.
You're hoping for check, 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 and then you'll just be shown jacks anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would fold. Like, there's not enough bluffs here in this configuration.
I might have called.
Really good, yeah. You played this really well post flop. This is great.
Yeah.
Oh, you notice as well, like, how much more experienced poker players agree about these hands. Like, Justin and I find this, like you were asking us earlier, like, is it clear what to do here? I don't think we've disagreed about anything yet, because these hands are quite clear, which means that...
No, that's not the reason. The reason is because Justin is invited on your stream, and you always give your opinion first, so he has to say yes. I'm telling you what's really happening here.
Right, Justin, you're going first now. No, I'm going to test this theory. It's funny when I have, like, Ben a Bad Beat or Clanty on, and they just, like, utterly, like, tear apart my arguments. I actually like that, though.
I feel like, compared to some other senseis, I tend to disagree more than the others, but...
I think that's fair.
Can we talk about pre-flop here? Again, I didn't feel comfortable, but I felt it was small enough of a 3-bet I have to call, but I don't know.
I'm going second.
I think you might want to take a look at some pre-flop ranges with 10 NL rake or 50 NL rake, because these, you definitely don't have to call a hand like this. I think you can, but yeah, you're supposed to be pretty tight facing a 3-bet when you're out of position and responding by 4-betting a lot, like we already talked about. So if you're going to play a 4-bet or fold, for example, you probably just fold this. And even if you play a GTO range, this is probably close to pure fold, I think.
I disagree. I go all in straight away here. It's the right play.
That's okay too.
No, surprise, surprise, I agree. Yeah, like Queen Jack suited looks like a good hand, but when you compare it to the position and the action, it's actually, you can see how it's like crushed a lot, right? It's just sort of dominated a ton. I get more nervous when Clanty's on.
About Queen Jack, it's dominated.
Yeah, I guess I do get nervous when Clanty and Ben are on. Yeah, because I know they're good players and they're also not very polite. good players. They're not like going to sugarcoat anything. No, they're not impolite, but they're not going to sugarcoat anything. They're going to tell you whenever they disagree, which is great. But it does put pressure on me. Yeah, absolutely. It's an uncomfortable feeling being the student when you're used to being the teacher, Christoph, right? Because you're used to being the bridge teacher.
No.
Now you're the
Yeah,
poker
but
student.
I don't mind. I don't mind. I like it.
I like
enjoy
it too, but it takes a lot of getting used to. It's a bit weird, right? When you do a lot of teaching. Okay, anyway. Thoughts?
So it's the type of spots that when I maybe 3 weeks ago I would raise a lot, thinking, well, it's a bluff. I mean, not really thinking why, but like I'm happy to take it down now, and I'm happy for the pot to get bigger. And somehow I changed that, but I'm not really sure why, because yeah, I mean, I can't fold, obviously. I've got too much implied odds, I guess. Implied equity, I don't know how you call it, but potential to win a big pot.
Yep.
And I feel that it should be a mix between raise and calls with that, actually. And maybe because players... And I feel if I hit an ace or a 9, it's not a spot when it's going to be that obvious to villain that I have the nuts, so I might be taking lots of money. So maybe that's why I feel that the raise is not as good, but I'm not convinced about what I'm saying.
I really like your thought process there. I think that's a very good thought process, for your level especially. Justin, what do you think?
About his response or about the spot?
Yeah, whatever.
I think this is kind of a wildly unintuitive spot for newer players because you're supposed to raise a ton here. Just with the hand you would want to continue. You probably have to raise, well, you definitely have to raise some top pair. You're also gonna bluff, hybrid raise a 10 sometimes, and you're gonna raise a bunch of hands like this.
Yep.
And you're gonna fold a bunch as well. But I think the reason why this spot tends to play weird is because despite villain 3-betting and then betting half pot on the flop, it looks like a scary range at first, but it's a bit depolarized in the sense they're supposed to have hands like queens, jacks, a 10, ace, queen, ace, jack, some decent looking hands with a lot of equity. And you know, if you give villain queens or ace jack and we raise here, it's not a fun time for them.
Yeah. I think I'm leaning call, mainly just because half pot on this board is a bit more likely to be like a size up, I think. Not always, but there'll be some people who just bet. Like third is the more normal thing to encounter, so when you do see half, that could just be someone that plays half, and that could just be what they do. But if it means anything, and it might not, it's usually going to mean more strength than weakness. And if that's the case, fish are also, I'm saying fish because half pot here is not a normal reg sizing to see. Not that it's bad, but it's not normal. And if it is a fish, if you raise here, they're probably not meant to 3-bet very much at all. And I could see them just ripping aces in or something like that, which would really suck for queen jack. So I'm leaning call here for those reasons. But in theory, yeah, way more raising than you would think.
Yeah, I was kind of ignoring the size they used and not appreciating that versus the size. I think call's good. Because it's not even half, it's 55% or something.
Yeah.
It's a little bit.
It's a little bit alarm bells territory for me when I see that on this board specifically. While it's the thing in theory, it's just not a thing people do unless they're a weaker player. And if it's a weaker player doing it, it kind of reeks of strength in these configurations. Also, the weaker player is going to have less jacks, probably, and less like ace queen in their range here because they're going to flat. They're going to play more cold call than a reg would in these positions with those hands. There you go. The proof is in the pudding. He was going to shove the flop if you raised. At least you got to see the turn. What is that sound?
Yeah.
It's a horrendous sound.
Is it from me?
I don't think it's.
Yeah, it's sorry. I'll mute myself when I don't speak. The neighbors.
Oh, right. You need a better mic. We need to get you a good mic. Maybe you can get a mic with your first winning month or something in poker. Right, we'll do one more, and then we're gonna start wrapping up. I hope you've enjoyed the stream today. So you're in Charlie's coaching place, Jimmy. Is that what you're saying? And I agree with you that I need to try to be aware of like my reaction to being in that rare spot where there's a really strong player on the show, and I can improve myself there. I do agree with you there. Equity realization is important. Yep, flop size is important. Yep, you kind of took the words out of my mouth. I hadn't read that yet. Yeah, exactly. So Jimmy sounds like Jimmy and I are definitely on a wavelength there. Yep. Okay. 12.5 in the big blind ace 5 suited. I don't feel too strongly about this. I think, yeah, 3-bet and call are close. 4-6-3. What are your thoughts here?
I mean, these are very small cards. I still think I have a range advantage because just I have better hands and this board doesn't connect with either my or his range that much. I guess check or bet is fine here. And I guess I probably just bet because when bet or check I feel is fine, I tend to bet.
Okay.
I feel very weak and empty when I don't have much to say.
Yeah, it's a hard spot if you've not really looked at it. So yeah, maybe have a think about this texture again. So 6-4-3. If you think about the difference between the big blind 3-bet range here and the button range, it's probably that the big blind 3-bet range contains more of the very big cards and very big pairs, and the button range contains more of like the medium pairs and medium cards. That said, big blind is meant to be kind of polar here and will have some connectivity to this flop. So it might be useful to imagine that it's small blind button just for educational purposes. If you're small blind and you 3-bet here and button calls, it's going to be quite a lot of check for small blind, like a very high check frequency, I think, because of that asymmetry, allowing button to connect a lot more to this than you. Like your king queen off, for example, is really bad on 6-4-3, right? Very, very bad. Now in the big blind, the good thing is you don't have king queen off all the time because you flat it sometimes. So it's less of a stark thing. But that's something to point out, right? That these low connected boards are not just like neutral. It's not that like both players miss. It's that the small blind 3-betters unpaired hands miss harder than the buttons range does.
You mean like he can have 6-7 suited or something like that?
Mm-hmm. But
Yeah.
also like as a more dense part of his range, like when he has sevens, he has it more often than you have sevens, right?
Okay, I see.
Even
Yeah.
if you're small blind, that's true. Even if you pure 3-bet sevens and he pure calls it, you have more stuff diluting sevens that's terrible than he does. That said, you do have some overpair advantage. It's not like you're dead here or anything. I'm not saying you can't do any bet, but yeah, you want to see this as like a largely unfavorable flop as flops go in this sort of situation. I don't really mind what you do in flop though.
And I think a lot of it has to do with the actual connectivity of the board. If this were 6-3-3, I think your analysis is pretty much spot on.
Yep. The three
But here
cards
the
between the 3 and the 7, or the 3 and the 8 that are connected are kind of the kiss of death for the 3-better in a lot of these cases.
Can you repeat that, please?
3 cards between a 3 and a 7, right? They're necessarily going to be connected flops that are going to favor the caller of the 3-bet. So like 4-5-6, 7-5-3, 7-5-4, 6-4-3, that kind of thing.
Okay.
This is a really tough spot. I wonder what your thoughts are here.
Mine?
Yep, you go first. You're the student. That's why it sucks for you to be the student, because Justin and I get to collect our thoughts as you struggle through the spot. So
I don't have any thoughts.
My thoughts are I'm I might still be ahead. I still have draws. I'm very unlikely to be drawing dead. Now what I'm thinking is that check call seems fine in every sense. I don't see why I would bet. I'm being called only by better hands, only denial, but I mean, no, I wouldn't. Yeah, weirdly enough, to me, it seems clear that it's a check
Right, I
call.
think you're grossly overestimating the showdown value of your hand then, and underestimating the fold equity against better, because villain has a lot of ace high that beats you, and even if villain has jack 10 of spades, you're still going to lose sometimes by like just being bluffed at a certain point in the hand. So betting can't be bad with this little showdown value and some redraw. That said, it's never going to be like an amazing play either, and I think probably the main thing to do in a spot like this is to not use a huge sizing and just play some smaller bets like half pot, third pot, whatever, and then like you're out of position with an open end straight draw and like not that much showdown value. It just can't be that bad to bet small here. That would be my take, but it took me a good like minute and a half while you were speaking to come up with that. My initial reaction to this spot is just like, I don't know. And that probably suggests that like I just haven't studied big blind versus button 3-bet pot, check, no, really at all, or as much as other lines at least. Justin, what do you think on this? I'm interested to hear what another pro expert, whatever you want to call it, thinks about this spot, because I think it's a weird one.
Yeah, I guess to start, I don't think this hand's ever meant to check down to the river and win, really. We like might chop if we're super lucky. The villain knows anything about what they're doing. The way I think I'd play this is I probably play 3/4 on turn, maybe bigger sizes, but it's not clear to me you can play small as well.
Yeah.
Pretty tempted to bet this hand. We have a lot of equity. The check call, we can't check call, so that line is immediately pretty bad. But the ace overcard,
we can't check raise either. So as long as like check fold, check call, and check raise are bad, like I just tend to bet in those spots, right?
I think you're supposed to bet this hand pretty often, but I also don't think the spot is good enough where we can bet all of our hands that can't check call but are okay. So we might have to just surrender and check fold this hand sometimes against a villain who knows what they're doing.
That's
but
my leak.
If I think we're not going to get punished, then
I really resent doing that. Like, there's something about this spot at like micro stakes where I'm just like, I'm not check folding. I just can't bring myself to do it, so I'm just gonna bet. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
Why is check calls that bad?
Because one, you don't beat all bluffs, right? You actually have a frail hand here. Villain could bluff with ace 7 or ace jack with a diamond or something like that here. Secondly, you're not drawing to anything very good. So you're losing to value, losing to bluffs, and you're out certainted. And you can't win with fold equity anymore when you check call. So you just, the EV's kind of drying up on that line. You just don't have a lot of EV sources.
I think it's just appreciating how tight the ranges are initially, just from the fact it's a 3-bet pot. Despite it being big blind versus button, they still just have a lot of pocket pair. They have a lot of stuff that hits the queen, and their weakest hands are going to be in the realm of king high, ace high. Yeah. There is some stuff we beat, but it's not like
Why do we have a lot of fold equity? Because, well, if you go with Justin's plan and bet big, your fold equity is going to be decent because, well, villain just has like jack 10 of hearts in his range, or jack 9, or 8-7 that doesn't want to call a gutter on this sort of spot, or ace high like ace jack, or maybe something like 8s with no diamond that doesn't want to call a big bet. If you go small, maybe 8s calls you more often than not, but then you're still getting a fold from like ace 10 of spades and king 10 and all of these hands. There's just like lots of hands that are folding. It's very easy when you first start playing poker, Pierre, right, to be like, I see the good hands because they're visually in front of me. I see ace queen, I see a flush, I see a set. But like, villain checked back the flop after calling a 3-bet. They just have all of the king jack of clubs and king 10 of hearts and stuff in their range. And sometimes you have to force yourself to see the stuff that's really bad, because the stuff that's really bad isn't in your face. It's not like on the board. It's not like staring at you, but it's there. You have to look for it.
Just to push on Pierre's question, because most of the hands you mention are hands we beat. So I guess Pierre's point is, why do you have lots of fold equity on hands that are worse.
Because
And you didn't mention that
because
many.
if villain has half a brain, they don't just check down King Jack of Hearts. Now, appreciate that you're playing at 10 and L, and people can play really, really terribly and check down King Jack of Hearts all the time in this spot or something. But in GTO, you're not supposed to win with terrible showdown value that only beats us like a few hands in villain's range in a spot that's not that good for your range. Like, this spot's not that good for your range. So if you check here, as Justin was saying, you're supposed to be bluffed by many of those hands, if not now, than on the river. So the frequency that we make it unscathed to showdown, in theory here, is very low. In practice, I think it's low too, but it's not as low. And so I think you're right that like in practice, you're going to check down and win more than you should.
It's non-realizable showdown value or
right.
fake showdown value, however you want to.
Ghost equity, as I call it in the Grinder's Manual, the ancient book that I wrote a long time ago.
Ghost has another meaning now, though.
Yeah.
I'm a bit confused. So let's say he has King Jack of Spades, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I suggested was check call. So let's say I check. If he bets with that, I call. I'm still ahead, and he's gonna have to fire again. Maybe he will, but in NL10, like you said, I don't think.
Yeah, but that's focusing only on one branch, right? When he has King Jack, like when you check call, you're also check calling against hands that you have terrible equity against that you're just always going to lose to, and he might bluff the river as well.
By betting, the same thing happen, right? If he has a hand better and I bet, he's gonna call.
Yes, but at least you have the benefit of folding out better hands in villain's range, like ace 10 and things like that. And hands that would have bluffed you later. You definitely can't check call turn and river here. You don't have the equity. So if you check the turn and face a big bet, you have to fold in this spot.
Yeah, we can check call depending on size.
Depending on sizing, yeah.
Depending on half. But assuming we face, say, like 2/3, which I don't think is really a good size, but it's probably something we can expect to see from people at these stakes, then we probably just have to end up folding.
Yep.
If we knew that villain was only going to bet third pot, then I'm way happier to check.
And if we knew his hand was King Jack of Spades, and that he was going to bluff, I would check call, but he's got too much other stuff in that betting range. The game tree is really complicated here, and it's very hard to solve in the way you're trying to solve it. It's very difficult to do. But if you run this into a solver, it will say that check calling a big bet's bad, and it'll say that betting's fine. So what I'd recommend doing is going away, looking at this in a solver, and looking at the villain's reaction on all those lines, and trying to like get a better feel for... Just try to improve your feel for this part of the game tree. It's very complicated. It's very hard to explain, because you have to go into so many different lines, right? Like when you check, you have to look at all the times you face a bet, the times you make it to showdown. What you'll see in the solver is that if you check here, you make it to showdown with ace high almost never. The solver just never chooses to check call twice with ace high, because it doesn't have enough equity against the range that goes bet to do that, and it's not even beating all of the bluffs necessarily. So if you want to isolate King Jack on its own and say, I can check call twice against that hand, you're actually playing a toy game. You're playing a version of poker where that's his only hand.
No, I agree with that. I was just... because, yeah, okay.
It's hard to... It's really like... It's a really complicated spot, and it's not a spot we're meant to just be able to like understand right away or anything like that. It's definitely going to take a lot of work to understand a spot like this, and don't worry about that. That's fine. I don't fully understand the spot either, by the way. I understand it to like some level, but I don't fully understand it.
This is probably the hardest spot we've had.
Easily.
I think, right?
It's like that bridge hand we had yesterday. It was a really hard bridge hand where we both had to like try and figure it out. Like, and even you were like, God, this is hard, right? So like, this is the same for me as that thing yesterday. It's just hard.
Okay. So he bets 4 big blinds, so I called.
Not the river, I think, but I don't know.
Yeah, so against 4 big blinds, this is getting even more confusing and tricky now, but like 1, this is not that bad a sizing in theory here, I don't think. Like, I think you could do this with his range. But 2, remember Jimmy's rule from earlier? That's what we'll call it, Jimmy's rule. If people go really small in position on the turn and they're fish, which he probably is, they're probably weak. So now I would probably raise. And I don't love it. I'm not in love with any option here, but I'd probably raise. And I'd probably attack it. And then like bluff the river. Because I think the amount of time you'll have a flush is really, really low. And he'll have a very mergy range with like 7s, diamond, and 9s, and a queen, and I think I'll just probably attack here. But I don't
The
hate
reason I'm
calling.
confused
Yeah,
is because the same player is probably going to bet flop with a bunch of their pocket pair, yeah?
true. Actually, yeah,
So what do they actually have?
very good point. Maybe they're more polar than I thought, even though the sizing looks mergy. Like
They might just have a bluff, to be honest.
yeah, or a queen, which they're probably not going to fold to a raise.
Yeah, but this picking the size of the queen is I guess it can happen. It's not insanely weird or anything, but
No.
I'm not particularly expecting it.
The only thing with call is that sometimes you're going to call and check the river, and they're going to check back with like ace jack of hearts, and you're just going to be like, oh my god. But raising's expensive, and like maybe that's the price we just have to pay. I don't know. Maybe I don't know what's best. I don't know. Justin might be right. This might be like not that many pocket pair, but it could be other merges to beat us too. But maybe call is better. I really don't know.
What does Jimmy thinks?
That's a good point. What does Jimmy think?
We don't have the chat anymore here.
Jimmy's a Charlie
In ter-
Carroll acolyte, so he probably wants to raise. I don't see Charlie doing anything but raising here. Sprint at him. See, there you go. He's gonna
I
go
think
nuts.
this is not necessarily a hand we're going to learn that much from.
No. This is like
this is a
staring
pretty
at like
fake
some
spot.
squeeze problem in bridge. Like, imagine we did a coaching session, you were like, right, this is a crisscross squeeze, I want you to solve it. I'd be like, no, I'm not doing that. Like, this is a waste of my time.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So wow. You could have given me 80 guesses. I'm not gonna have guessed the 36 red. Alright guys, that was a lot of fun. Thank you to chat for hanging out as well. That was great. You're not playing much like Charlie. That's really interesting actually, like how, and that's the same in our Discord where like a lot of senseis have different styles and stuff. We don't preach like some, you know, uniform strategy, but that's interesting. But yeah, it's been fun hanging out. Yeah, there's a lot of cool hands today. So Christoph, how did you find that?
6-3, huh?
I know, right?
Go ahead.
How did you find today?
First of all, thanks to both of you. It was really, really great. No, I enjoyed a lot. I realized how little I know. I mean, I already knew how little I know, but how long the road is. And I guess the main takeaway is trying to think more about spots where I can make, I'm going to call them thin because they're not obvious to me, value bets. And I also feel that it's hard to improve on that because these are very often value bets that are exploitative and that GTO won't tell you about, or at least won't tell you made a blunder or a big mistake. It will still be green in the GTO thing. It's like one of the alternatives, and they are much harder to find out by yourself. But then when I thought about it after you explained it, it was clear. That, like, I remember when I had this 9, I hit the 9 at the river, and I think a lot of money is to be made there. So that's the main takeaway that I would take from that session. And yeah, thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I really enjoy working with you in both poker and bridge, and I hope we'll continue to do more. I wonder if we could one day make some bridge content together. I don't know if there's a market for it or anything. I had a little shot at it on YouTube. I found it incredibly hard to get the channel going. But yeah, maybe there's something we can do there.
I saw in the chat earlier someone said that they started the game of bridge when we started discussing bridge, so there are a few people.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think it's just like an incredible game. I really do.
Pierre and I can coach Justin and yourself. We can have a game to.
That'd be awesome.
And call you fish all the time.
That'd be awesome, Justin, wouldn't it? Like, we could play together and these guys could like, or we could like split up or whatever. We could have like a bridge session or something. That'd be cool. Yeah, you be up for that?
Sure, I can bring you some hand histories.
Yeah, anytime. Bring it on.
I want to be there.
I aligned with a couple buddies today. There's a spot. It basically goes preempt and a 2-spade overcall, and I have an 8-card diamond suit.
We need to know the exact hand. I don't know if you want to do that on stream, but I'm happy to discuss it.
Probably not great for the poker stream.
We'll wrap this one up, and then why don't we like actually chat on Discord or something? We can make a little group, and we could set up like a a team session. I've also got a partner that I'm like gearing up to play an event with. He's quite a good player, actually, young player. He's probably better than me, more experienced than me because he played as a kid and stuff. But we could like get him involved as well. If you have a partner, Justin, there's lots of ways we could do this, you know, like do bridge coaching. But we'll save this for another conversation. I'm getting carried away now. All right, chat. Thank you for hanging out today, and take it easy. Check out Carrot Corner. Use code community for 20% off. This is Community Week. We're building the Discord. We're making it amazing. Check out what we're doing there, and we'll see you next week for more stuff. Bye bye.